we will now welcome the third panel of the event, which will focus on building wealth in Cyprus. The panelists will discuss property, finance, and the digital currency shift. Please welcome Mr. George Chrysochos, CEO at Cyfield Group Companies, Ms. Agathi Nicolaou, founder of A. Nicolaou and Associates LLC, Mr. Greg Palos, Director and Head of Financial Institutions at Lawrence Stevens, Mr. Asim Arshad-Director at the Dispute Resolution Department at Lawrence Stevens, and the moderator, Mr. Alex Chrysaphiades-Partner at Adler Shine LLP. Thank you.
Everybody, thank you for having us on the panel. Thank you to Sava and everybody here for inviting us to the panel. Just to introduce the panel, we've got George here at the end here, who is the CEO at Cyfield, Agathi Nicolaou, founder of A. Nicolaou Associates law firm in Cyprus, and Greg Palos, Director and Head of Financial Institutions at Lawrence Stevens law firm, and his colleague Asim Arshad, who's Director of Dispute Resolutions. We've got a bit of a mix as well. We have some small presentations and then a panel discussion. So I think, George, you have something for us to start with.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Savvas, for inviting us. Indeed, it's an event which takes place every year for so many years, and good to see some old faces and new as well. Today, I'm going to talk about real estate in Cyprus, give you some high-level numbers. I'm not going to go into the details why Cyprus is great. I think we've heard this 4 times today. It is the best place on earth, as you could see. So I'm going to jump straight into the real estate part and show you why real estate in Cyprus is great as well, not just Cyprus as a country. I wanted to say something about the previous presentation. UK already has one of the lowest housing ownership in Europe. It's the amount of homes per capita is way less than the other countries you mentioned earlier. So it's already facing a huge issue, and that issue will keep growing because we're also developing now in the UK. This is Invest Cyprus, congratulations. It's a headquartering policy, which is the main driver behind real estate success. I was saying exactly to a similar crowd like you, that we've been doing so well in real estate, there is no chance we're going to continue next year. For us, 22 was a surprise, 25,000 transactions. We came here 23, even more. 25, even more. If you see like 25, that's up to October, which includes August, which is a dead month in Cyprus. And usually real estate transactions are happening a lot faster at the end of the year because of all these targets that everybody has. So we are going to continue in 25 with the same pace. We are the only European country which in the last 5 years we've had increasing amount of real estate transactions, the only one, which shows how healthy the market is. Now, we also have these graphs which show this is the yield, the year-on-year change, right? So as you can see, the apartments, of course, they are leading the pack because that's the most liquid investments, but it shows the upward trend that we've seen through after the crisis. And here we see the rental values. The previous panel was right. People now today in real estate, it's a global trend. They're focusing more when it comes to investment on the rental value, cash on cash, than appreciation. People want to see how much money they will be making every year, than what will the prices go, because we've seen a lot of instability lately in real estate, so focusing on rent is something we see in Cyprus as well. And yes, we've been doing great. Rents in Cyprus are increasing at a faster rate than real estate prices. So yes, the yields are increasing year on year. And now we're comparing some European capitals as well. This is the data from Knight Frank. As you can see, Nicosia is leading the pack in terms of rental return on average, comparing the other European capitals. It is, okay, this was where the difference was even more 2 years ago. But yes, other European capitals are catching up slowly, but still Cyprus is doing better than anyone else. So this is the most important slide of the presentation. And this is what you need to look at. Because everybody's asking, how much will this keep going? Where will real estate go? And then we present this image. This is all European countries' income to housing ratio. What is the affordability of real estate? As you can, based on income. As you can see, Cyprus is down there, bottom of the pack. We've been doing so well in real estate. Prices have been rising, rates have been rising, and still, most of the people in Cyprus, foreigners and locals, they can afford to buy real estate. That shows a very healthy prospect, a very resilient demand, and it will keep continuing. Look at Greece. Greece real estate is doing fantastic, but we've come to a point where affordability is an issue. Not everyone can buy real estate. This is the answer to some political bullshit that we hear in Cyprus as well. I'm sure the government here can understand what I'm saying. When they are talking about affordability in real estate and selling to foreigners, this is the answer. It's always comparable. Yes, of course, the prices are increasing, but we need to see what the others are doing. So yes, real estate Cyprus will continue going strong because people can afford to buy. So I think that's it for today. I was very quick. Thank you for your time over here.
Greg's also got a presentation for us. When we were discussing the panel before, having a little chat beforehand, this topic intrigued a lot of us and interested a lot of us in terms of how this will move going forwards, and I think it will create a great discussion after Greg's presentation.
Let me just give you a brief introduction. Well, we're going to take the conversation here in a slightly different direction. We've heard a lot of we've had presentations this afternoon on the basis of investment in the UK and investment in Cyprus, and I won't be adding to that. But Asim and I are going to be talking about an investment cohort that we feel is underrepresented, an investment cohort where we feel have a solution. And what we're talking about is not something that is going to happen. It's something that is happening. And we've done over 50 transactions in the last year. And I'm talking about people that hold digital assets, crypto holders, people who have considerable wealth. They can move around within the crypto micro systems, but have enormous problems, both regulatory, systemic, and others, when it comes to actually transferring or changing those assets into real-world assets, property, or either high-value stuff, whatever you want to buy. At the moment in the UK, so we're talking about somebody, say, who's got £1 million of Bitcoin, he wants to sell it, he wants to buy a property, goes to his solicitor and tells him that's what he wants to do, and at that point the solicitor says, I can't act for you. I can't do the enhanced due diligence that's required by the Law Society, money laundering, etc., know your client, source of funds, and it stops. At that point, Lawrence Stevens steps in because over the last 5 years, particularly due to the hard work by my colleague Asim, we have developed the source of funds and crypto skill set needed in order to be able to overcome these hurdles. And if you think about the amount of wealth that's currently held around the world by these people, these are an opportunity for almost everybody in the room in some way or another to make money. Simple as that. You know, this is an investment class that needs us, needs everybody. So I'm going to talk to you about 4 or 5 case studies that we've picked up over the last year. Asim will then speak to you in a more general way about exactly what digital assets are and how we can work in that world and deal with some of the sort of misapprehensions that exist about this area. So the first case study, this was an individual who purchased $350 worth of Bitcoin in 2011. In 2022, he found his old laptop and the private keys to his BTC wallet. At that juncture, his holdings were worth $42 million. So $350 to $42 million. His plan was simple. I'd like to buy a nice house and retire. And to do that, he had to sell his Bitcoin holdings. Unfortunately, that's the problem, because at that stage, none of the solicitors would work with him. The banks weren't interested. And he was stuck. Fortunately, he came to us. Now, we were able to work closely with the client. We gathered the contemporaneous records of the original acquisition. It was in the New Liberty Exchange, which is now defunct. We reviewed the blockchain transactions showing BTC transfers to his self-custodial wallet. We could verify the wallet ownership and subsequent transfers to Kraken for liquidation. We helped him with bank inquiries to get them comfortable with what was happening here, providing detailed documentation and explanations to satisfy their requirements and ensure that the client wasn't debanked. In other words, his accounts just promptly closed. In that situation, we were able to make referrals to tax experts, wealth advisors to help him, and wealth management services. So our source of funds report satisfied all the compliance requirements, enabling the property purchase to complete and the client then to proceed on his journey in terms of retirement and future investment. And that brought in about 5 or 6 different skill sets, I imagine most of which are actually represented in this room today. Right, the second case study. We have a number of investors in this area that don't want to sell their crypto assets. They want to continue holding them because they feel that it's going to move in their favor. They're going to increase in value. In this particular situation, the client had a holding of approximately £415,000. We were able to find him a lender who lent him £300,000 against that wallet. We advised on the collateral management provisions in the loan agreement. We prepared a comprehensive source of funds report to verify the origin of the crypto assets and to effectively clean, if you like, the cash that the loan generated. We were able to obviously act on his behalf in terms of his property acquisition. So this shows you that it is possible within this ecosystem to maintain your holdings but still create cash that you can spend buying a property, buying a company, buying a yacht, whatever you would like. All of these acquisitions have the same problem. The sellers will ask you, what are your source of funds? And that's where the system really blocks. Now, as we know, everyone's very scared of Bitcoin and crypto, and everyone talks about the scammers. Well, given our understanding of blockchain and crypto, we also are able to help people that have been defrauded. So in this particular situation, we had a client who owned 48 Bitcoin, at the time worth £1.4 million. And he had about 200,000 cash as well. He was defrauded of these and came to us. It involved multiple exchanges, and time was obviously critical. So we acted on an urgent ex parte basis. We were able to trace the pathway using blockchain analytics. Having traced the Bitcoin to the exchanges, we were able to notify the exchanges of their receipt of proceeds of crime, and we sought their cooperation. We also applied to the High Court for emergency relief. So we managed to also identify the owners of those accounts. So we got proprietary injunctions over the Bitcoin and the cash, disclosure orders to identify the account holders at the exchanges having received the stolen Bitcoin, and we obtained worldwide freezing injunctions. To date, we have judgment for 4.1 million because of the increase in value of Bitcoin, and we've recovered significant funds for the client, and we believe that we're also in a position to help other people that were defrauded by the same scam. So if you're wealth advisors, bankers, lawyers, accountants, and you hear that people have been scammed, we can help. And that's, I think, a very important point. Our next case study is one that's close to the heart of all property people. The client went to auction and was successful in winning. Paid his 10% deposit, £75,000, promptly exchanged contracts, and then went to his solicitor to complete the transaction. At that point, the solicitor said, look, I can't act for you. I can't do the enhanced due diligence required. That's it. And it was a nightmare for him. Now, fortunately for him, he found an article that Asim had written some time ago, and we got to him, or he got to us, 3 days before the expiry of the notice to complete period. So on a £750,000 purchase, he was facing the loss of his £75,000 deposit and the investment. Now, in 3 days, we were able to provide the source of funds report. We were able to, obviously, carry out all the property due diligence. Our real estate team dealt with that, and we saved the man's money and the investment. And in that case, the entire purchase price was paid with liquidated Bitcoin. So sometimes people get themselves into this position and they simply don't know that there's a solution, and they lose their funds. My final example is that in England, in the United Kingdom, digital assets are property, okay? And people have no interest in digital currencies or anything like that can suddenly find that they, for example, have inherited it. What are they going to do? Now, in this particular case, a well-known software programmer participated in the Ethereum pre-sale. And he bought some Ethereum, about 100,000 at something like 14 cents a coin. With the growth of Ethereum, that holding acquired a value of 300 million. And pursuant to some wealth planning advice that he was given, he decided very generously to gift 1,500 Ethereum to 30 close friends. So each friend effectively inherited £4.5 million worth of Ethereum. We were instructed by one of these recipients who wanted to use the gifted Ethereum to buy a property. The matter required a source of funds report to satisfy compliance requirements. This meant verifying not only the recipient funds, but also the provenance of the giftor's wealth. So we had to look at the guy making the gift, including the original genesis of the Ethereum allocation. So we verified the giftor's genesis allocation of the Ethereum during the pre-sale. We could trace the Ethereum holdings through blockchain records to confirm legitimacy. We followed the chain of transactions from the giftor to the recipient, and we prepared a detailed report detailing the origin and transfer of funds. So once again, our report satisfied all compliance requirements and allowed the client to complete the purchase of the property. But the reality is, notwithstanding the fact that most digital holders, I would say probably are under 40, there will be many circumstances where third parties that have no contact with crypto or anything at all will end up being the owners of this, under wills, under intestacy, under a lot of different things. It's just another asset class that the particular person owns. And so therefore, it's something that we need to kind of wake up to. Now, the UK, as I said, probably over 50 transactions. I'm aware that within Cyprus, there are other systemic and regulatory obstacles. But the fact remains that Cyprus is becoming quite a hub for digital assets. And so therefore, effectively, the journey has to begin somewhere to move forward, to create an environment where people can invest in Cyprus using liquidated digital assets and do so comfortably. At this juncture, I'm going to ask Asim to come forward, who's the intellectual out of the two of us. And he'll now talk to you more generally about crypto and perhaps also dispense with one or two of the more, how shall I put it, erroneous ideas about the sector. Thank you.
So each of those individuals that Greg has just taken us through represented a fascinating client and set of circumstances, not only for me as a lawyer to get to grips with, but they also represented a compliance and AML risk to traditional financial institutions and professional services, such as ourselves as lawyers, accountants, and wealth advisors. Imagine having a fortune, only to find you can't buy a home, or make deposits to your bank account, or indeed engage in traditional wealth management. And that's the reality that's faced by numerous individuals who either hold significant wealth in crypto or have generated significant wealth in crypto, particularly in environments where regulation has developed to prioritize stability. So despite their significant wealth, they face systemic barriers when attempting to access traditional financial services and indeed professional services. And these barriers tend to stem from compliance frameworks that are not best equipped to handle the intricacies and the complexities of crypto transactions and the decentralized finance world as a whole. And that leads to an institutional disconnect between crypto native individuals and the traditional financial world. Just by way of a very high-level overview. What are crypto assets? And essentially speaking, and simply put, they're digital assets that only exist in the digital world, and they leverage cryptography to secure their transactions. They aren't really a currency, which is why I hesitate and avoid using the common name cryptocurrency, because they aren't legal tender, they're not universally accepted, and they're not issued by a central bank. Although they do share some properties like that of currency. Some function as payment systems, thanks to the blockchain technology that underpins them, which enables secure peer-to-peer transactions without any centralized intermediaries such as banks. They also share characteristics with commodities being stores of value affected by supply and demand. And as Greg touched on, legally speaking, in England, crypto assets are considered a form of property, and many other jurisdictions have taken this approach. One of the main contributing factors leading to these friction points that we've mentioned is the inherent structural and cultural differences. On one hand, you have this new generation of young, successful entrepreneurs and speculative investors who have little to no experience in dealing with wealth or dealing with traditional financial institutions or professional services indeed. And these crypto wealth holders are typically young, digitally native, jurisdictionally fluid. On the other side, the way that their wealth has been created, generated, and extracted can be completely alien and foreign to traditional financial institutions and professional services. And that makes it very difficult to comprehend and advise on, and it represents a compliance nightmare. One of the starkest differences between traditional finance and crypto is the speed at which wealth can be created. In contrast, traditional financial institutions are built around more predictable ways of wealth accumulation and centralized control. And in a nutshell, the worlds at some point speak completely different languages. And this cultural and structural divide results in a collision of expectations and processes. And institutions often struggle to appreciate the processes behind crypto wealth creation, and that leads to compliance challenges and ultimately a reluctance to engage. And much of this disconnect and reluctance to engage can be attributed to misconceptions that have been propagated by sensationalist headlines and sound bites. Crypto is only used by criminals, crypto is anonymous, crypto is untraceable. Whilst there is some truth to these statements, they have to be considered in context, and crypto individuals and their portfolios must be reviewed on a case-by-case basis. Every transaction made is recorded on the relevant blockchain, which is essentially an immutable, uncensored public ledger. The transparent and immutable nature of the blockchain technology means that you essentially have an audit trail to view and verify source of wealth and source of funds. Crypto is not anonymous, and it is possible to trace and identify addresses with individuals, and it's possible for individuals to prove ownership of addresses used. So, taken into consideration, crypto is an undesirable way to launder funds or conduct criminal activity compared to traditional methods. And just a stat I was reading this morning on my way here, it's estimated in 2023, 22.2 billion was laundered via crypto. In comparison, 800 billion being laundered through traditional fiat money. So those three statements I made earlier, crypto is used by criminals, crypto is anonymous, crypto is untraceable, have some element of truth, particularly the first two. As such, we'd be naive if we did not accept AML risk is amplified in the crypto space due to rapid wealth creation, pseudonymous transactions, complex transaction flows, and the absence of regulated centralized intermediaries. Traditional compliance systems can default to suspicion when encountering crypto-related activity, which may be completely benign. For example, traditional compliance frameworks can often flag the rapid gains in crypto as indicators of illicit activity. However, in the crypto space, it's an inherent characteristic that is a very volatile space, probably one of the most volatile asset class there is. And these price appreciation and indeed depreciation are frequently structural, and they're driven by protocol launches, token listings, speculative market cycles. So overcoming this hurdle requires an adapted approach, an updated approach that leverages specialist expertise, contextual framing of portfolio complexities, and speculative and understanding of blockchain data. So with the right tools and knowledge, crypto transactions can be traced and verified, and the transactional flow can be determined. However, transactional flow is only one part of the puzzle. It focuses on where the funds came from and where they went in terms of blockchain addresses and platforms. Crypto source of funds reporting seeks to go beyond transactional flow analysis by explaining where the funds originated and how that client accumulated their wealth. In essence, it's a narrative of what happened at each stage of the transactional flow. And in that, we seek to answer the same questions that traditional financial institutions would seek to answer. Where did the wealth come from? How was it earned? Who were the counterparties? What are the risks? And although these answers may look different in crypto, they're all still answerable. The reports seek to demonstrate legitimacy of funds and support regulatory compliance needs by meeting AML requirements and documenting the origin and nature of wealth. It seeks to identify risk indicators. It doesn't just flag traditional AML risk signals, for example, high transaction volumes, but also risk signals which may be unique to the crypto asset space, for example, use of mixers. It explains whether these patterns are genuinely suspicious or normal within crypto ecosystems, considering the context of that client's individual crypto asset activity and portfolio. For example, use of privacy-focused wallets or decentralized exchanges might look high risk in traditional finance, but can be common and benign behavior for legitimate crypto users seeking security or lower fees. And equally, large transfers between self-custodial wallets may appear unusual, but could simply reflect portfolio rebalancing or cold storage practices. So failing to address the integration challenges between crypto and traditional finance results in billions of legitimate wealth remaining siloed within the crypto world. And this disconnect not only stifles innovation and investment, but the opportunity cost includes lost business and reduced financial inclusion. A significant part of my work over the past 5 years has been working directly in this area, working with crypto wealth holders seeking to bridge their wealth back into the traditional world. The challenges they face are real: frozen bank accounts, sudden debanking, and a lack of professionals willing to engage. As a lawyer with strict AML compliance obligations, we could only do this because we applied rigorous due diligence. We were able to satisfy ourselves that these clients had made their wealth completely legitimately, though often through unconventional means. And that's the key, understanding the context and complexity behind crypto wealth and translating it into a framework that traditional institutions can understand and trust. Thank you very much.
Thank you. George, I'm going to come first to you with the initial presentation you had. In terms of real estate and how it's doing, what are the drivers behind the performance that you've seen?
Yes, so real estate, just like every other market, is supply and demand. So you have to split the two and look at demand. For example, there is the local buyers and there's foreign buyers. When it comes to the local buyers, there are two things that drive purchases. One is affordability, so it's their salaries, which in Cyprus they've been increasing more than anywhere in Europe, more than inflation. By the way, inflation in Cyprus is 0 the last 2 months, just to compare also another figure with the UK. So it's a salary increase, which is tremendous, and mortgage cost. In Cyprus, banks are giving out loans at rates of 2.4%. 2.4%, that's like 3 times less than the UK. So with these rates and with this affordability, people are buying. So demand on the local market is strong. On the foreigner side, is what we've been seeing earlier, quite in a few presentations. The things that make Cyprus attractive to international people, international companies, wealthy families are still there, and they're getting stronger and stronger every year. So with the attraction of all these international businesses, their employees, which are usually high-income employees, they are seeking for real estate. Wealthy people are buying institutionally as well. They're investing in big offices, in universities, in hospitals, in hotels. in big blocks. There is a lot of activity from international wealthy people in Cyprus. On the supply side, the constraint of new products is the same everywhere. Just like UK is facing issues with licensing, Cyprus is not that terrible, but still, it's getting harder and harder to get new units in the market year on year. The government is trying to make some regulations in terms of supplying more units, but on the other hand, when it comes to construction, the shortage of labor, which again is something we see all over Europe, is also visible in Cyprus. Therefore, with the constraints on supply and the strong demand, the market prices will continue to rise, and the investment will always be lucrative in Cyprus.
Thank you. And just talking about purchasing, when we were talking initially and linking back to Greg and Asim's presentation, you've got some real world experience of people buying with crypto. Do you want to give us some real life feedback on how that works?
Yeah, correctly. Cyprus is becoming a hub for digital assets. 2 weeks ago, we leased a building to an Austrian company specializing in digital assets, in tokens and crypto, and they're bringing 200 people in Cyprus. But there is an ecosystem already created in Cyprus. As a company, we've received quite substantial amounts of crypto money from clients, and everything has been going through local companies. The exchange, the crypto exchange, is based in Limassol. The fintech, the payments company, the EMI, which has been receiving the money after the exchange, is based in Cyprus. And then, of course, through the local EMI, regulated by Cyprus entity, as a Cyprus entity, regulated by the central bank and CySEC, we've been doing payments to our subcontractors, suppliers, so the money is fully flowing inside Cyprus economy. So, of course, all the procedures are there. All these companies are well regulated, compliance, AML, KYC, they do all these things. And property in Cyprus is becoming more and more flexible in terms of payments. And all my other colleagues, other developers are also selling a lot of real estate through crypto. Of course, this doesn't make Antonis happy and the banks. But yes, there is an ecosystem which supports it. And of course, any experience from the UK, which has been doing this for a few more years than us, is very welcome.
So just touching on some of the legal aspect of that, Agathi, if I come to you, what are you seeing in terms of the legal aspect of crypto and the wider property sector? Okay,
let me say at the moment that I'm very impressed by George's work and what they are doing. I was actually impressed by, when we had the first discussion with George, that it's actually been happening in Cyprus. I mean, selling properties and receiving money through the wallet. And of course, I have the gentleman on my left side that they are coming to cover our needs in the legal part, in terms of the legal part and compliance-wise when it comes to doing transactions with the banks. Yes, most of the clients, they are not actually doing transactions directly from wallet to wallet. It's not something that I had an experience with in Cyprus, but we do we are receiving actually requests, not every day, but every week, I will say, coming from foreigners that would like to invest in Cyprus, and the money, the origin of the money will come through wallets. That's something that, like George said, doesn't make happy the banks, and we are under the discussion now with the banks with what actually Grigory and his team is coming to bring onto the table. So we're now looking into how we can help our legal system and our banking system get into next generation, next level. Obviously, we do have our regulators in Cyprus, both Cyprus Securities and Exchange Commissioner and the central bank, that they're giving licenses so we can see the establishment of this industry in Cyprus. Now we need to move forward and deal with it, with money coming and trade in Cyprus. So hopefully we will manage to do that in the next couple of months, I will say. Yeah.
Thank you. And I think, Greg, I think you were quite pleasantly surprised that there were already transactions already moving in crypto.
Yeah, I was. What I wasn't really aware of, because I was aware of the Cypriot banking system's position, which if it becomes aware that you have digital assets, it's like, we can't touch you. And of course, Georgia's developed a system which completely avoids that. And you have the movement of funds from to external, if you like, payment suppliers. The real situation here that we need, ultimately, this is not going to go away. Digital is going to become more and more mainstream. America leads, the rest of the world follows. So at some point, Cyprus will have to move towards the position that we have in the UK. Heavily regulated, yes, but that's not a problem. There's a way to deal with all of this. And it's all down to the fact that at the end of the day, everything is transparent. This is what people don't understand. People think that it's some kind of dark world, dark web. It's not. You just need the skills to be able to actually follow the money and understand the story. And I think in those circumstances, what we're offering is really risk-free. Because if a bank is involved in a transaction and we provide the report on the crypto element, there's no difference between that and us providing a report on a property. We're still doing the source of funds. The bank will still do its own internal work on know your client, etc. But that then opens up a whole world of possibilities. And just this week, the Bank of England announced various plans they have for the creation of the digital pound. And of course, once that happens over here, so that people could actually have their salaries paid in digital currency, and that will be a currency because it's pegged to the pound and backed by the Bank of England, the market's going to open. We're slightly ahead of the curve. We acknowledge that. A lot of skepticism, I'm sure, in the room. Absolutely. But if you're a wealth advisor, chances are, I would bet in the next 3 years, somebody's going to die and someone's going to inherit, and they won't know what to do with the digital currency or the digital assets, even at just that most basic level. Another example we had, going on a bit, but a client had 3 Bitcoin, just 3, but they were worth 50,000 each, and they wanted to use it to buy their next home. They were fortunate enough to find us, and we were able to help them. Otherwise, they would just have 3 Bitcoin and never be able to do anything with it. So I think that there will be a change of mindset amongst the wealth world, amongst the financial world, where when you're having initial contact with a potential customer, there will be more questions asked. Do you hold any digital assets? Do you have anything like this? Can you, and it will become more and more mainstream.
Thanks. Equally, and George touched on this essentially, that Cyprus has become a real digital asset hub. I think you mentioned in our discussions that there's several big players like Revolut who are establishing a presence in Cyprus, as well as several Forex businesses. What's the panel's view in terms of this movement and how it will change the business landscape in Cyprus?
Yeah, so basically the story started with the Forex companies, right? So we had the Forex companies coming to Cyprus about 15 years ago, 12 years ago, and the banks, they didn't want to touch them. So these people were desperate to find someone to make their payments. So that created the need of another industry, the EMIs, the payment companies. And if you come to Cyprus in the highway, you're gonna see so many signs of advertising payments companies and EMIs. So that was a secondary market which was created as a result of the Forex and gambling. I forgot gambling as well, many gambling companies. So once we established those EMIs, and there are a lot of EMIs, even Revolut came to Cyprus, they got the license number 2 for digital trading in Cyprus by CySec. The company I was talking about earlier, which we leased the building, is license number 3. So they're all coming now. Created a friendly system for crypto exchanges to be created. They said, okay, we have an ecosystem which is friendly to gambling companies, Forex companies, which they are considered high risk by other countries and banks. And there is people who are serving them, so they can serve us as well. So crypto exchanges were born in Cyprus as a result of that. So they can easily trade their money. That's why the society and the other businesses, like a very traditional business like us, we do buildings, we have been using them. So it all started with the Forex, and it's propagating everywhere now, this friendliness and flexibility when it comes to payments and crypto.
Agathi?
Actually, based on what George said, I would say that yes, as service providers, we faced a huge problem with the banks when it came, CySec were giving licenses to forex companies, to investment firms, and we had a huge problem on them when it comes to the bank accounts. Not even one bank in Cyprus was unable to open clients' account for this kind of services. So the need of an EMA and alternative solution came into the picture, and then central bank were giving license to the EMAs, and then now we have new product, CASP, cryptocurrency companies, management companies. And the good thing about Cyprus is that when we face something, we always try to find a solution and adapt it. Like we said earlier, that Cyprus is actually based on the service provider. Our economy is based on the service provider. So services like mine in the legal, George in the construction, audit, and every other single profession in Cyprus, we push the government, we push the things to move forward and be adapted to the new world, to new,
And with the legal adaptation as well, to keep it robust and keep user confidence.
Definitely, definitely. We always try to be in line with the regulations. We are a EU-based country. We follow the EU. Compliance is very, very strict in Cyprus, and our regulator is very strict with the compliance. Regulators, not regulator. So yes, we're doing great job in Cyprus in terms of the licensing, adopting new industries. Move forward and follow, the international habits. And yes, I would definitely agree that Cyprus is becoming a new hub for fintech, cryptos now, and so on.
And of course, the service that Greg and Asim have talked about would complement and provide more confidence and robustness within that software system.
Alex, when we're talking about, buying something not from the developer, I mean from A to B, from individuals, we won't see many cases where the transactions will be in wallets, yeah? So in order for us, as, the lawyers or the accountants to deal with the actual transaction and be in compliance with the AML regulations, we will, and I'm very happy that I met Gregory that can provide this kind of products so we can promote that line of business also in Cyprus, because we are, like I said before, we're receiving such requests. So we need to, follow the rules.
Excellent.
Hopefully we will convince the banks as well.
Thank you. I'm conscious of time as well, so I'm at this point going to just open up quick questions, if there's any. Oh, lots.
Really interesting to hear about the cryptocurrency and the KYC, all of that, and the security of the blockchain I get, and that was very well articulated. How do you deal with the volatility, though? In other words, if it's not going, as Agathi said, wallet to wallet, and it's going to a traditional currency, at what point in the transaction do you convert to fiat? Does that or the current or the coin somehow sit in your client account? At what point do you have security over that coin? At what point do you have security over the coin or the token? Does it convert to fiat so that you do away with the risk of volatility? And just as a final thing, Gregory, on the same point, if you borrow against crypto, at what point could you be in a technical breach of your loan to value if your currency suddenly falls, your coin, and how do you protect against that?
All right, I'm quite an old man, so I'll try and take all your points, and if I forget one, then remind me. I think, with all due respect, you're kind of confusing two things, but we'll deal with those. Most transactions that we deal with, the person liquidates their digital assets first, and if you like, then transfers it to their bank account, and that's where they have their first problem, because the bank doesn't want to accept the money. And then obviously in the course of the normal conveyancing transaction, it comes to our client's account, and then it goes through. Where we have a situation which is actually still quite rare, but has happened, where the seller and the buyer agree that the payment will be made in the digital currency, that's really towards the end of the transaction. And there is a particular form of contract and agreement that we prepare which covers the points that you make. Because at the end of the day, the buyer has to accept that if there is volatility, that's in the value of the coin, if you like, the value of the property remains the same. So the buyer has to understand that he has to put in more coin or make it up with cash. The final point you mentioned was...
where people have borrowed against.
Yeah, this loan, this kind of thing is actually not new in a sense. Think about a situation which has historically been around for hundreds of years, where people wanted to raise loans against existing shareholdings in companies. So imagine you have a situation where you've got £1 million worth of shares in Tesla. You could deposit those certificates in the bank, and the bank will give you a loan secured against those shares. Shares are volatile. And the agreement that would normally exist is that if the value of the shares fell below a certain figure, there would be an immediate cash call, and the borrower would have to put the money in. Within those agreements, there's also a position that says that if the value of the coin falls to a certain point, the lender has the unilateral right to liquidate the position, take their money back, and give the borrower the balance. And you obviously, though, need a lender that can track the value of the digital currency at all times, because this could happen at night when you're asleep. But there are, to our knowledge, a good number, well in excess of 20 different kinds of lenders of all types that are now active in this market in this way.
I also want to say something about this. The way we see crypto is not as an asset, but as a currency. So we don't hold it. As soon as the client sends us the crypto, and we see it, we get a notification on the phone, we click a button, within seconds converted to fiat. So we don't take any volatility risk. And what we give to the client as a receipt is what was the rate at the time of receiving and conversion. So because we are a traditional business, we cannot take this. But crypto is amazing as a currency, but not as an investment. That's a different thing. It's not an asset class. And the other thing is, usually the money we receive is USDC, which these are fixed against some real assets and real currencies. Of course, Bitcoin, Ethereum are more volatile, but most clients, they like to buy real estate with USDC. USDT is banned in Europe now, unfortunately, so they focus on USDC.
Thank you. I think we probably do have more questions, but I think time is of constraint. So I think if anybody does... Oh, there's one more question, Sava. I'm going to take it, and then...
you all talk about property in Cyprus, but I would struggle to invest in Cyprus until you sort out title deeds. And that's an ongoing...
I think this is one for the Cypriot solicitor.
Okay, interesting. Okay, in order for someone to invest in Cyprus, you need obviously to go to the right people, yes? To the right legal advisor and the right developer or seller. So we had problems with title deeds back in the days. We don't do that, George, now. I mean, this is a problem that was discussed it was something that we discussed many years ago.
I just bought a house with my family 5 years ago. It took 5 years to get title deeds on an individual plot because of the building regulations approval to go through. That's not a legal system that operates effectively. So the problem still exists, and it exists with historic properties that can't be sold or bought because the developers haven't completed their land obligations, and title deeds is an ongoing issue.
I began my response by saying that you have to go to the right people, yes? The problem began 5 years ago when you actually entered the transaction, not now. So, I mean, if you buy, even the problems that we had like 10 and more years ago, now we're resolving them. We are issuing, even with the so-called englovisμένους αγοραστές, now we are actually giving the title deeds. I mean, in 2025, the problem in our industry is not the title deeds. Like I said, provided that you are going to the right persons.
It's also a matter of the developer wanting to issue title deeds, right? So today, after the crisis, because many banks had mortgage on assets, and there were no titles for the buyers, and the banks were getting the asset of the buyer because the land was mortgaged to the bank. So they made this new law about the trapped buyers, which basically anyone who is a buyer can automatically issue a title deed from themselves, independent of the developer. So if you are really trapped and there is a problem, and the developer, let's say, went bankrupt, you can still get your own title if you want today. So that's what I mean. Legally, we fixed it. Now, in terms of time, yes, sometimes it can be an issue. It's all a matter of how much a developer wants to quicken up the procedures to issue the deed. But today's, yes, back in the day, 20 years ago, some developers were on purpose not issuing title deeds, not to create competition to themselves, because their buyers cannot resell. So yeah, that was a bad story, but it's history. So if the house you bought was an individual plot, you already had the plot. It had a title on the plot. The plot had a title.
The time took because the local authority wouldn't issue the title deeds. It's got nothing to do with the developer. It was 2 houses built on one scale. However, for 5 years for local authority approval for building control to go through, that's too long.
Yeah, now we have a new EOA, the districts. Basically, that was the job that municipalities were doing. So now, instead of having 40 municipalities doing all the technical work, the building control, they've all been going to 5 authorities. Every district has a single authority, which they're doing final inspection permits, they're doing building control, they're issuing building permits. So now it's been simplified. Additionally, the lands registry now, which is the next step, they gave all the steps that we were doing in-house. It was basically counting the area, finding the value, doing the surveying. All these things we're doing in-house by the lands registry. So now what they're saying is, you, the developer, are going to do all these things through a licensed surveyor, etc., etc. You're going to bring me all the data, and within 3 months, I'm going to give you the title deed. So now, yeah, the procedure is much faster now.
I think it's maybe something for discussion outside as well. And if there are any more questions, please feel free to find them in the
Thank you to panel 3. I'm sure everyone found this to be a current and engaging discussion. And it is now time for a scheduled coffee break, and we hope you enjoy it for the next 15 minutes in order to proceed with the next part of the event. Thank you so much.